We were talking last night on Christmas Eve here about how we complain about our lives. We don't have the brand new car. We don't have the latest Mercedes, the latest iPhone. But to put it into perspective, I brought up Grandpa when we were talking last night about when Grandma went through. Maybe, Mom, you could get into the genocide and what happened in the beginning of his life. Then they had to deal with the Nazis later. They had to deal with the Nazi party after when they grew up. But I'll let you get into some of the details. And this is on.
Okay, you want. Okay, this started years and years ago, around 1914, 15, when the Turks murdered Armenians and Greeks. They were very wealthy, and they wanted to take over their businesses. My father's family, his name was Goja Borosian. They had a different name, and they were all killed during the genocide. And my father was put in an orphanage at the time. He was only 2 years old. And he grew up in an orphanage and met my mother, who was also orphaned. Her parents were also killed. He met my mother in the orphanage, and they were adopted by one Armenian Greek family and moved to Greece. They took them to Greece. My father and mother grew up together in Greece, and they decided to leave Greece because they were very poor, to go to France. They went to France. They lived together and got married. And it was very hard for them to get married. They needed special authorization that they were not really brother and sister. They were adopted, both of them. They got the authorization from the Armenian bishop in France to get married. And that's when I was born. My father, to become a French citizen, joined the French Legion, the Legionnaire, and World War II broke, and he was sent to Germany. And my mother was left with my sister. I had a 2-year-old sister at the time, and my mother was pregnant with me when my father left. And he came back a year later because my older sister had died at 4 years old. And my mother was very, very upset. And I grew up with a mother who kept crying all the time and take me to the cemetery to see my sister, to see my sister's tomb. And I can continue. And I grew up very poor, and I didn't know my father until I was 8 years old. My mother,
because he was off fighting.
He was in Germany fighting. He was taken prisoner in Germany. He was put in Auschwitz camp, and he had to prove that he was not a Jewish person. So they would put him in the gas chamber, and to prove that he was not a Jewish person he had to get undressed, and he had to show that he wasn't circumcised. That was the only way he could prove that he wasn't a Jew. And they saved them. In fact, a German peasant saved them and kept them until he went to Germany. Then he escape to Russia. And then for Russia, he contacted the French embassy or army, and they sent him back. But it took about 8 years for him to be back in France and meet his daughter, an 8-year-old daughter.
He had spoke about how when he was in the prison, he only got like 1 or 2 potatoes a day to eat.
Well,
you know anything about that?
He said they were so mistreated in the prison that they would go through the garbage and take the potato peels and cook them and eat the potato peels. When he was before he was taken prisoner by the Germans, it was so cold in Germany that they used to pile up the dead people and make shelters of them and eat behind the dead people. It was such a bad thing. They were starving, but I cannot go through that. I'm sorry.
He had told me that he was a tailor by trade.
He was a musician by trade. He was a musician. He was a violinist by trade, but he also was a tailor. So the German generals hired him to do the tailoring for him. So he was also treated a little better at the time. And he was helped to escape from Germany to Poland, and then from Poland to Russia. But it took a very long time until he got back to France. And my mother and I lived in one room apartment, and we didn't have much to eat. We used to go in shelters every time we hear the sirens going. We used to go underground shelters for a week, 2 weeks without food. And the American Red Cross would come down and give each child half a glass of milk and a slice of bread. We were so hungry. Do you know that? We didn't have no cell phone. We didn't have no clothes. We didn't have any place to shower. We didn't have anything for the longest time.
What about the family that was Jewish family that you knew?
Yeah, and then my mother, when she lived in a one-bedroom apartment, had a neighbor. Her name was Mariam. Yeah, and she has sent her son and her daughter. She was Jewish. She sent her son and her daughter to someplace, I don't remember where.
Well, they sent them away because the Gestapo was
Because
coming
the
around,
Gestapo, yeah.
rounding up the Jews to kill
Yes,
them.
so she sent them
camp.
to her. Yeah, she sent her daughter and son away, and she stayed. And my mother hid that her Jewish neighbor for a long time. I don't know how long. I was just a child at the time. I was 4, 5 years old, 6-year-old. And then one day.
But what if you were caught sheltering them?
Yeah, one day her neighbor said, Armin, my mother's name was Armin. She said, Armin, I got a letter from my relatives. My kids are okay. I'm going to join them. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. And that night she went back in her apartment, and the German came. Somebody must say something. The Germans came and took her, and I still could hear the screaming of that woman when the Germans took her, and we never heard from her again. They took her away, so probably into a camp or something. I don't know. I was too young to know, and that's about the stuff. And then my father came back, and they were very, very poor. He tried to make a living out of sewing clothes, and he became popular because he was a very popular man. Became very popular, and I grew up in France until I couldn't take it anymore, and I wanted to get away to better myself. I had won a scholarship to go to the Beaux-Arts in Paris because I was a good designer at the time in France, and my father didn't want to let me go. He said, "What are you going to do in France? You don't, without a family?" You know what he meant, you know. So he won't let me go. So since then, I did not take a paintbrush in my hand until my son Stephen got me lessons in Roslyn 30 years later, and I went back to do little things. But so what I learned by learning by myself. I used to sit late at night with a candle because we didn't have lights all the time, with a candle and read anything I could put my hands on. I read French, Victor Hugo, Dumas, I read Molière. It's all French, very popular authors. And I learned a lot by reading, and that's what reading and knowing is good for you. And I didn't have schooling, but I learned by myself what I know today. And I think I did pretty good. I came in this country. I had an uncle here that my father found years after that. I had an uncle here who sponsored me. And then I met Grandpa, and we got married. And this is how I had my 3 children. Richard, which I almost died before I gave birth to him, and he was not well until
just recently.
Yeah. He was not well until for a long time. It was the miracle boy, they told him at the hospital. And then I had Linda and Stephen, and thank God I am very lucky to have my family here, my sons, daughters, son-in-law, and 4 beautiful grandchildren. and I'm very, very lucky.
So what do you think
You know?
about society today? the way things
Society
are?
today, I think everybody is spoiled. They don't know what happened years ago. They don't realize that by throwing away a piece of bread, we used to go almost in the garbage to take bread out during the war. My mother used to send me up in the hills to find vegetables or to pick grass to cook.